The ancient bells of Valdoria Castle chimed midnight as Captain Marcus Thornfield completed his final security round. As head of the Royal Guard for the Kingdom of Valdoria, Marcus had served the crown for 15 years, but tonight felt different. The air carried an unusual tension that made his instincts sharp and alert. Queen Isabella had passed away 3 weeks ago, leaving behind a grief-stricken kingdom and her ambitious daughter-in-law, Princess Evangeline. The transition period had been challenging, with various court members positioning themselves for influence under the new reign. Marcus had noticed subtle changes in behavior among the staff and nobility, but nothing concrete enough to raise formal concerns. As he walked through the dimly lit corridors of the East Wing, Marcus spotted an unusual glow coming from the royal treasury chambers. This was strange because the treasury had been sealed since the Queen's death, with access restricted to only the most senior officials. The light flickered and moved, suggesting someone was inside with a torch or lantern. Marcus quietly approached the heavy oak doors and pressed his ear against the wood. He could hear muffled voices and the distinct sound of metal objects being moved around. His training kicked in immediately. Drawing his sword carefully to avoid any noise, he positioned himself to observe through a small gap in the doorframe. Inside, he could see Princess Evangeline directing 2 hooded figures as they carefully removed items from the Queen's personal jewelry collection. The late Queen's crown jewels, passed down through generations, were being wrapped in dark cloth and placed into leather traveling bags. Marcus recognized some of the pieces: the diamond scepter of Valdoria, the emerald tiara of the northern provinces, and the legendary ruby necklace that had belonged to the first Queen of Valdoria. Princess Evangeline seemed nervous but determined. She kept checking a small piece of parchment, apparently following a specific list of items to collect. The 2 men with her worked efficiently, suggesting this was a well-planned operation rather than a spontaneous decision. Marcus noticed they wore the clothing of palace servants, but their movements seemed too professional for ordinary staff members. One of the men whispered something about a ship waiting at the harbor, and Evangeline nodded urgently. She mentioned that they needed to complete the task before dawn, when the morning guards would begin their rounds. Marcus realized this was not just theft. This was an organized smuggling operation designed to remove the kingdom's most precious treasures from the country. The captain faced a difficult decision. He could confront them immediately, but without knowing the full scope of the plan or who else might be involved, he risked letting other conspirators escape. Instead, he decided to gather more information about their intentions and destination. Marcus quietly retreated from the door and positioned himself in a shadowy alcove where he could observe anyone leaving the treasury. He needed to understand whether this was simply greed or part of a larger political conspiracy that could threaten the stability of the kingdom. As he waited, Marcus reflected on Princess Evangeline's behavior since the Queen's death. She had seemed genuinely grief-stricken at the funeral, but had also been surprisingly quick to involve herself in administrative matters. Several times, she had requested access to various royal documents and had asked detailed questions about the kingdom's financial assets. The sound of footsteps approaching made Marcus focus on the present situation. The treasury doors opened slowly, and the 3 conspirators emerged, each carrying bags that clinked softly with the sound of precious metals and gems. They moved with purpose toward the castle's rear entrance, which led to a path that connected directly to the harbor road. Marcus followed at a safe distance, using his knowledge of the castle's layout to stay hidden while maintaining visual contact. The group moved through servants' corridors and back staircases, clearly familiar with routes that would avoid the main guard posts. This level of planning suggested they had been preparing for this operation for some time. As they reached the castle's rear courtyard, Marcus saw a horse-drawn cart waiting in the shadows. A 4th person, dressed as a merchant, stood ready to receive the stolen goods. The princess handed over her bags and spoke briefly with the merchant before returning toward the castle. While the 2 hooded men loaded the cart and prepared to depart, Marcus now faced his most critical decision of the night. He could arrest Princess Evangeline immediately, but the evidence would be stronger if he could catch the entire smuggling operation in progress. He chose to follow the cart, knowing that intercepting the goods at the harbor would provide undeniable proof of the crime while potentially revealing the full network of conspirators. Marcus moved swiftly through the castle grounds, taking a shortcut that would allow him to reach the harbor road before the smuggler's cart. His knowledge of every path and trail around Valdoria Castle proved invaluable as he navigated through the moonlit countryside. The cool night air filled his lungs as he ran, his mind racing with the implications of what he had witnessed. The harbor town of Port Valdoria lay 2 miles from the castle, connected by a winding road that passed through dense forests and rocky outcrops. Marcus knew several vantage points along this route where he could observe the cart's progress without being detected. He positioned himself behind a cluster of large boulders that overlooked the main road, giving him a clear view of approaching traffic. Within 30 minutes, the merchant's cart appeared, moving at a steady pace toward the harbor. Marcus could see the 2 hooded men walking alongside the vehicle, occasionally scanning the surrounding area for any signs of pursuit. The merchant drove with confidence, suggesting he was familiar with this route and had likely used it for smuggling operations before. As the cart passed below his hiding spot, Marcus caught a clearer view of the cargo. The leather bags containing the royal jewels were concealed beneath layers of ordinary trade goods, bolts of cloth, sacks of grain, and wooden crates that appeared to contain typical merchant wares. This elaborate disguise indicated a sophisticated operation with experience in avoiding detection by port authorities. Marcus continued following the group, using the forest cover to remain hidden while maintaining visual contact. The road descended gradually toward the coast, and soon he could smell the salt air and hear the distant sound of waves against the harbor walls. Port Valdoria was a busy trading center even at night, with ships arriving and departing according to the tides rather than daylight hours. The cart reached the harbor district just as the pre-dawn fog began to roll in from the sea. This timing was perfect for the smugglers, as the reduced visibility would make their activities less noticeable to casual observers. Marcus positioned himself on a rooftop overlooking the main pier, where he could observe the entire harbor area. The merchant guided his cart to a specific dock where a medium-sized ship waited with its sails already prepared for departure. The vessel flew the colors of the neighboring kingdom of Astoria, and Marcus could see crew members moving about the deck in preparation for an immediate departure. This suggested the smuggling operation had international connections and possibly political implications beyond simple theft. Princess Evangeline arrived at the harbor in a hooded cloak, traveling in a simple carriage that would not attract attention. She moved quickly to the ship, where she engaged in an intense conversation with a well-dressed man who appeared to be either the ship's captain or a high-ranking passenger. Their discussion seemed urgent, with frequent gestures toward the bags of stolen jewels. Marcus strained to hear their conversation, but the distance and harbor noise made it impossible to catch specific words. However, he could observe their body language, which suggested disagreement about something, possibly the timing of the departure or the division of the stolen goods. The loading process began with careful attention to concealing the true nature of the cargo. The bags containing the royal jewels were placed in a specially constructed compartment beneath the ship's deck, hidden among legitimate trade goods. The crew worked efficiently, clearly experienced in this type of covert operation. As Marcus watched, he noticed other suspicious activities around the harbor. Several individuals who appeared to be ordinary dock workers were actually keeping watch for any signs of official interference. They positioned themselves at strategic points around the pier, creating an early warning system for the smugglers. The captain realized this was a much larger conspiracy than he had initially suspected. The level of organization, the international connections, and the sophisticated methods suggested this was not Princess Evangeline's first illegal operation. This raised serious questions about her loyalty to the kingdom, and whether she might be involved in broader treasonous activities. A new development caught Marcus's attention as a second carriage arrived at the harbor. From it emerged Lord Chancellor Aldrich, one of the kingdom's most senior officials and a trusted advisor to the royal family. His presence at this clandestine meeting shocked Marcus, as Lord Aldrich had always been considered above reproach in his service to the crown. The Chancellor carried a leather portfolio and appeared to be delivering important documents to the ship's passengers. This suggested the smuggling operation was connected to official state business, possibly involving the transfer of sensitive information along with the stolen jewels. The implications for national security were becoming increasingly serious. Marcus knew he needed to act soon, but he also recognized the importance of gathering as much intelligence as possible about this conspiracy. He decided to wait until the ship was ready to depart, allowing him to identify all participants while ensuring the stolen goods could be recovered before leaving Valdorian waters. The situation at the harbor grew more complex as Marcus continued his surveillance. Lord Chancellor Aldrich's involvement transformed what appeared to be a simple theft into a potential act of treason, with far-reaching consequences for the Kingdom of Valdoria. Marcus carefully documented every detail he observed, knowing that his testimony would be crucial in any future legal proceedings. From his rooftop position, Marcus watched as Princess Evangeline and Lord Aldrich engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion near the ship's gangplank. Their conversation lasted nearly 15 minutes, with both parties gesturing emphatically and occasionally pointing toward the concealed cargo. The tension between them suggested disagreement about aspects of their plan. The ship's captain, a weathered man with distinctive scars across his left cheek, repeatedly checked his pocket watch and pointed toward the horizon. Marcus understood the urgency. The tide was turning and dawn was approaching. Ships departing at dawn would attract less attention from harbor authorities, as legitimate merchant vessels often preferred early morning departures to take advantage of favorable winds. As the final preparations for departure continued, Marcus noticed a pattern in the crew's behavior that confirmed his suspicions about their criminal experience. They moved with practiced efficiency, securing cargo in ways that would prevent detection during casual inspections. Several crew members carried weapons concealed beneath their clothing, and their positioning around the deck suggested they were prepared for potential confrontation. The most disturbing development came when Marcus observed Lord Aldrich hand over what appeared to be official royal seals and documents. These items would allow the conspirators to conduct business abroad using the authority of the Valdorian crown, potentially creating diplomatic incidents or financial obligations that the kingdom would be forced to honor. Princess Evangeline made final arrangements with the ship's captain, including what appeared to be payment for passage and services. The transaction involved a substantial amount of gold coins, suggesting this smuggling operation was well-funded and had been planned far in advance. The princess retained one small bag, which Marcus assumed contained selected jewels for her personal use. A new complication arose when Marcus spotted 3 additional royal guards approaching the harbor district. He recognized Sergeant William Hayes and 2 junior guards who were conducting what appeared to be a routine early morning patrol. Their presence created both an opportunity and a danger. While Marcus could use their assistance to arrest the conspirators, their arrival might also alert the smugglers and cause them to accelerate their departure or resort to violence. Marcus faced a critical decision about when and how to intervene. The ship was nearly ready to depart, with crew members already beginning to untie the mooring lines. If he waited much longer, the stolen jewels would be beyond recovery, and the conspirators would escape to foreign territory where Valdorian law enforcement would have no jurisdiction. The captain chose to act immediately, but with strategic coordination. He descended from the rooftop and quickly intercepted Sergeant Hayes and his patrol, briefing them on the situation and positioning them to block the harbor's main exit routes. This would prevent any conspirators from escaping by land, while Marcus confronted the group at the ship. With his backup in position, Marcus approached the pier directly, no longer attempting to remain hidden. His sudden appearance caused immediate alarm among the conspirators, with several crew members reaching for their concealed weapons. Princess Evangeline's face went pale as she recognized the captain of the Royal Guard emerging from the pre-dawn shadows. Lord Aldrich attempted to take control of the situation by asserting his authority as Chancellor, demanding that Marcus explain his presence at the harbor and ordering him to withdraw immediately. However, Marcus had observed enough criminal activity to justify his intervention, and he refused to be intimidated by political rank when faced with clear evidence of treason. The ship's captain shouted orders to his crew, attempting to complete their departure despite the Royal Guard's intervention. Crew members began cutting mooring lines while others moved to defensive positions around the deck. The situation was rapidly escalating toward open confrontation between the smugglers and Valdorian law enforcement. Marcus called out clearly, identifying himself as captain of the Royal Guard and demanding that all parties remain where they were pending investigation of suspected theft of royal property. His authoritative voice carried across the harbor, attracting the attention of legitimate dock workers and early morning fishermen who began gathering to observe the unfolding drama. Princess Evangeline made a desperate attempt to board the ship before it departed, but Marcus positioned himself to block her access to the gangplank. The confrontation had reached its climax. With stolen national treasures aboard a foreign vessel, senior government officials involved in treasonous activities, and armed criminals prepared to fight their way to freedom. The next few moments would determine whether the Kingdom of Valdoria would recover its stolen heritage and expose the full extent of the conspiracy, or whether the criminals would escape with both the jewels and potentially damaging state secrets. Marcus prepared for what might become a violent confrontation, knowing that the security of the realm depended on his actions in these crucial moments. The confrontation at the harbor reached its peak as Marcus stood firm between Princess Evangeline and the ship's gangplank. The early morning fog swirled around the pier, creating an almost theatrical atmosphere for the dramatic standoff between law enforcement and the conspirators. The sound of seagulls and lapping waves provided an eerie backdrop to the tense silence that had fallen over the group. Princess Evangeline's composure finally cracked under the pressure of being caught in the act. Her carefully maintained facade of innocence dissolved as she realized escape was no longer possible. She turned to face Marcus with a mixture of defiance and desperation, her voice trembling as she attempted one final deception. She claimed that she was conducting legitimate royal business, transporting certain items to Astoria as part of diplomatic negotiations that required absolute secrecy. Princess Evangeline insisted that Lord Aldrich could verify her authority to remove the jewels from the kingdom, and that Marcus was interfering with important state business that was beyond his understanding or jurisdiction. Lord Aldrich, however, was noticeably reluctant to support her claims. The Chancellor appeared increasingly uncomfortable as he realized the full implications of their situation. His involvement in the conspiracy had clearly been motivated by factors he had not fully considered, and the presence of armed criminals and foreign agents suggested the operation had evolved beyond his original expectations. The ship's captain made the situation more volatile by drawing a curved blade and threatening anyone who attempted to board his vessel. His crew followed suit, producing various weapons and positioning themselves for a fight. Marcus could see that these were experienced criminals who would not hesitate to use violence to protect their cargo and ensure their escape. Sergeant Hayes and his patrol guards moved closer to provide support, but Marcus signaled them to maintain their positions covering the escape routes. He knew that rushing the ship would likely result in casualties and might give some conspirators the opportunity to escape with portions of the stolen goods. A strategic approach was necessary to ensure complete recovery of the royal treasures. The standoff continued for several tense minutes, with each side evaluating their options and the potential consequences of various actions. The growing daylight was working against the smugglers, as more harbor workers and early morning travelers were beginning to notice the unusual activity at the pier. Marcus decided to apply psychological pressure by publicly announcing the specific items that had been stolen, making it clear that he had complete knowledge of the conspiracy. He loudly described the diamond scepter of Valdoria, the emerald tiara of the northern provinces, and the legendary ruby necklace, emphasizing their historical significance and irreplaceable value to the kingdom. This detailed knowledge shocked Princess Evangeline and Lord Aldrich, who realized that Marcus had been observing their activities for an extended period. The captain's announcement also attracted the attention of nearby civilians, who began to understand that they were witnessing the recovery of stolen royal treasures. The ship's captain attempted to intimidate Marcus by threatening to harm Princess Evangeline if the royal guards did not withdraw immediately. However, this threat backfired by making it clear that the princess was involved with dangerous criminals who viewed her as expendable. Lord Aldrich visibly recoiled from this development, apparently realizing for the first time the true nature of his collaborators. Marcus responded to the threat with calm authority, pointing out that harming a member of the royal family would constitute an act of war against Valdoria, bringing the full weight of the kingdom's military forces against anyone involved. He also noted that several witnesses were now present, making any violence a public crime that could not be covered up or denied. The psychological pressure began to work as cracks appeared in the conspirators' unity. Lord Aldrich stepped away from Princess Evangeline and the ship's captain, clearly attempting to distance himself from the more criminal aspects of the operation. His abandonment of the conspiracy created an opportunity for Marcus to exploit the growing divisions among the group. Taking advantage of the confusion, Marcus made a bold move by stepping onto the ship's gangplank, forcing the captain to decide whether to use violence against a Royal Guard captain in full view of multiple witnesses. The captain hesitated, apparently weighing the consequences of attacking a high-ranking law enforcement officer versus the benefits of completing his smuggling operation. During this moment of uncertainty, Sergeant Hayes led his patrol in surrounding the ship, cutting off all possible escape routes and making it clear that the conspirators were completely outnumbered. Additional Royal Guards were arriving as the morning progressed, responding to the commotion at the harbor and the unusual concentration of official activity. The tide was now literally and figuratively turning against the smugglers. The ship could no longer depart safely due to the changing water levels, and the growing presence of law enforcement made violent resistance increasingly futile. Marcus sensed that the moment for final resolution was approaching, requiring decisive action to conclude the confrontation successfully. The critical moment arrived when Lord Aldrich made his decision to cooperate with the Royal Guards rather than continue supporting the criminal conspiracy. The Chancellor approached Marcus with his hands raised, indicating his surrender and willingness to provide information about the operation. This betrayal shocked Princess Evangeline and enraged the ship's captain, who realized his diplomatic protection was evaporating. Aldrich's confession began immediately as he attempted to minimize his own culpability by revealing the full scope of the conspiracy. He explained that Princess Evangeline had approached him months earlier with a proposal to secretly liquidate certain royal assets to fund a private army in Astoria. Her ultimate goal was to return to Valdoria with foreign military support to claim the throne by force. The revelation that this was not simple theft but preparation for a military coup sent shockwaves through everyone present. Marcus realized that preventing the smuggling operation had potentially saved the kingdom from civil war and foreign invasion. The stolen jewels were intended to purchase weapons, hire mercenaries, and bribe foreign officials to support Evangeline's claim to power. Princess Evangeline, faced with complete exposure of her treasonous plans, abandoned all pretense of innocence and launched into a bitter tirade against the current royal succession. She revealed deep resentments about being passed over for the throne despite her royal blood, and expressed her belief that she could rule Valdoria more effectively than the designated heir. Her confession provided crucial evidence of treason, but it also revealed the sophisticated nature of her conspiracy. Evangeline had been planning this operation for over a year, carefully cultivating relationships with foreign agents and identifying weaknesses in the kingdom's security systems. The theft of the jewels was merely the final step in a complex plan to destabilize the government. The ship's captain, realizing that his passengers had compromised his operation with their confessions, attempted to salvage the situation by offering to negotiate directly with Marcus. He proposed returning the stolen goods in exchange for safe passage out of Valdorian waters, claiming that his crew were merely hired transporters who were unaware of the political implications of their cargo. Marcus rejected any negotiation with the criminal captain, making it clear that all stolen property would be returned and all participants would face justice according to Valdorian law. The captain's authority as head of the Royal Guard gave him the legal power to arrest anyone involved in crimes against the crown, regardless of their rank or nationality. The physical recovery of the stolen jewels began as Royal Guards boarded the ship and located the hidden compartment containing the royal treasures. Each item was carefully examined and documented to ensure nothing had been damaged or replaced with forgeries during the smuggling attempt. The discovery of additional stolen items that had not been on Marcus's original list suggested this was not the conspirators' first theft from the royal treasury. As the sun rose fully over Port Valdoria, additional law enforcement officers arrived to assist with processing the crime scene and arresting the numerous participants in the conspiracy. The harbor had become a hub of official activity, with investigators documenting evidence and interviewing witnesses who had observed portions of the criminal operation. Princess Evangeline's attempts to claim diplomatic immunity were rejected, as her treasonous activities had forfeited any protection she might have enjoyed as a member of the royal family. The severity of planning a military coup against her own kingdom placed her crimes in the highest category of treason, carrying the most serious legal consequences available under Valdorian law. The international implications of the conspiracy became clear as investigators discovered correspondence between Evangeline and high-ranking officials in Astoria. These documents revealed that the neighboring kingdom had been prepared to provide military support for her coup attempt in exchange for favorable trade agreements and territorial concessions that would have significantly weakened Valdoria's sovereignty. Lord Aldrich's cooperation with the investigation helped uncover additional conspirators within the royal court who had been providing information or assistance to Princess Evangeline's operation. Several minor officials and palace servants were arrested as the full network of treason was exposed, revealing how deeply the conspiracy had penetrated the kingdom's government. The Adur merchant who had transported the stolen goods was revealed to be a professional smuggler with connections to criminal organizations throughout the region. His arrest led to the discovery of other ongoing illegal operations, including the trafficking of weapons and sensitive information between various kingdoms. This broader criminal network had been using legitimate trade relationships as cover for extensive illegal activities. As the morning progressed, the successful interception of the smuggling operation became a source of celebration among loyal citizens of Valdoria who had gathered to witness the recovery of their kingdom's treasures. The public nature of the arrests served as a powerful demonstration that no one, regardless of rank or position, was above the law when it came to crimes against the crown and kingdom. The investigation expanded rapidly as royal guards and court officials worked to uncover the full extent of the conspiracy that had threatened the kingdom of Valdoria. Marcus coordinated the effort from a temporary command center established at the harbor, where evidence was being catalogued, and witnesses were providing detailed statements about their knowledge of the treasonous plot. The recovered royal jewels were transported back to Valdoria Castle under heavy guard, where court jewelers and historians began the process of verifying their authenticity and assessing any damage that might have occurred during the attempted smuggling. The meticulous examination revealed that Princess Evangeline had been planning her theft for months, as several pieces showed signs of having been secretly removed and replaced with temporary substitutes on previous occasions. King Frederick, who had been ruling as regent since Queen Isabella's death, was awakened and briefed on the situation in his private chambers. The young king's reaction combined relief at the recovery of the royal treasures with shock at learning of his sister-in-law's betrayal. The revelation that Princess Evangeline had been planning a coup attempt forced him to reconsider the loyalty of many other court members. The interrogation of Princess Evangeline took place in the castle's secure chambers, where she initially attempted to maintain her innocence despite overwhelming evidence. However, as investigators presented her with documents, witness testimony, and physical evidence of her crimes, her defiant attitude gradually gave way to bitter explanations of her motivations and detailed confessions about her co-conspirators. Evangeline's testimony revealed that her resentment toward the royal succession had been growing for years, fueled by her belief that she possessed superior leadership abilities and a stronger claim to the throne. She had begun cultivating relationships with foreign agents and disaffected nobles who shared her dissatisfaction with the current government, gradually building a network of supporters willing to participate in her conspiracy. The investigation into Lord Aldrich's involvement uncovered financial irregularities in the kingdom's treasury that had been ongoing for nearly 2 years. The Chancellor had been secretly diverting funds to support Evangeline's conspiracy, while also enriching himself through corrupt dealings with foreign merchants. His cooperation with the investigation was motivated primarily by his desire to avoid the most severe punishments for his crimes. Additional arrests continued throughout the day as investigators identified other palace employees who had assisted the conspiracy. Several guards who had been bribed to provide information about security protocols were taken into custody, along with servants who had helped Princess Evangeline access restricted areas of the castle. The scope of corruption within the royal household was more extensive than anyone had initially suspected. The international ramifications of the conspiracy became a major concern as king. Frederick consulted with his advisors about how to respond to Astoria's involvement in the coup attempt. Diplomatic messages were sent demanding explanations for their citizens' participation in treasonous activities against Valdoria, and preparations began for potential economic sanctions or other retaliatory measures. Marcus found himself at the center of court proceedings, as his eyewitness testimony became crucial evidence in the legal cases against all the conspirators. His detailed observations of the theft and smuggling operation provided prosecutors with a comprehensive timeline of events and clear evidence of each participant's role in the criminal conspiracy. The captain's diligent surveillance had made conviction of the traitors virtually certain. The security review that followed the conspiracy's exposure led to significant changes in the Royal Guard's procedures and protocols. Marcus was tasked with implementing new measures to prevent similar infiltration of the castle's security systems, including background investigations of all personnel with access to sensitive areas and regular audits of the Royal Treasury's contents. Public reaction to the failed coup attempt was intense, with loyal citizens expressing both outrage at the betrayal and gratitude for the Royal Guard's successful intervention. The dramatic nature of the conspiracy, involving stolen crown jewels and foreign military support, captured the imagination of the population and became the subject of countless discussions throughout the kingdom. The legal proceedings against Princess Evangeline and her co-conspirators were expedited due to the serious nature of their crimes and the clear evidence of their guilt. The kingdom's highest court was convened to hear the treason cases, with the most experienced judges presiding over trials that would determine the fate of those who had attempted to overthrow the legitimate government. As the immediate crisis passed, Marcus reflected on the events that had transformed a routine security patrol into the exposure of a major conspiracy against the crown. His vigilance and quick thinking had prevented not only the theft of irreplaceable national treasures but also a foreign-backed coup that could have plunged Valdoria into civil war and permanently altered the kingdom's independence and sovereignty. The successful resolution of the conspiracy strengthened King Frederick's position and demonstrated the effectiveness of the kingdom's law enforcement institutions. However, the betrayal by trusted members of the royal household also highlighted the need for constant vigilance against internal threats to the stability and security of the realm. 3 months after the dramatic events at Port Valdoria, the Kingdom of Valdoria had restored stability and emerged stronger from the crisis that had threatened its very existence. The trials of Princess Evangeline and her co-conspirators had concluded with justice being served, sending a clear message that treason against the crown would face the full weight of the law regardless of the perpetrators' social status or family connections. Princess Evangeline received the maximum sentence for high treason, including permanent exile from the kingdom and forfeiture of all royal titles and privileges. The court's decision reflected both the severity of her crimes and the need to demonstrate that royal blood provided no protection for those who betrayed their oath of loyalty to the crown. Her supporters in Astoria were declared unwelcome in Valdoria, effectively ending the diplomatic relationships that had enabled the conspiracy. Lord Aldrich faced similar consequences for his role in the treasonous plot, with additional penalties for the financial corruption he had perpetrated during his time as Chancellor. His cooperation with the investigation resulted in a slightly reduced sentence, but he too lost all official positions and faced significant financial restitution requirements. The former Chancellor's fall from grace served as a powerful warning to other officials about the consequences of betraying the public trust. The foreign smugglers and mercenaries involved in the operation were sentenced according to their level of participation, with the ship's captain receiving the harshest punishment due to his leadership role and history of criminal activities. The international nature of their crimes led to diplomatic negotiations about extradition and shared jurisdiction, ultimately resulting in agreements that strengthened cooperation between kingdoms in combating cross-border criminal conspiracies. Marcus received significant recognition for his role in exposing and preventing the coup attempt, including promotion to Lord Captain of the Royal Guard and expanded authority over the kingdom's security operations. King Frederick personally commended Marcus for his vigilance, courage, and strategic thinking that had saved both the royal treasures and the stability of the government. The security reforms implemented following the conspiracy's exposure transformed the Royal Guard into a more professional and effective organization. New training programs emphasized the importance of observation skills and intelligence gathering, while improved background investigation procedures ensured that only the most trustworthy individuals gained access to sensitive positions. Within the royal household, the recovered crown jewels were returned to their rightful place in the royal treasury, but with enhanced security measures that made future theft attempts virtually impossible. The near loss of these irreplaceable artifacts had reminded everyone of their historical and cultural importance to the kingdom's identity, leading to increased public interest in preserving Valdoria's heritage for future generations. King Frederick's handling of the crisis earned him respect and credibility that strengthened his position as ruler and demonstrated his readiness to lead the kingdom effectively. The young king's decisive response to the conspiracy, combined with his support for justice and reform, helped unite the population behind his leadership and reduce political tensions that had existed since the previous queen's death. The diplomatic relationship with Astoria required extensive reconstruction following the revelation of their involvement in the coup attempt. Negotiations led to formal apologies, compensation agreements, and new treaties that included specific provisions against harboring each other's political criminals. The crisis ultimately resulted in clearer international standards for preventing foreign interference in domestic political affairs. Marcus established new intelligence networks that provided early warning of potential threats to the kingdom's security, transforming reactive security measures into proactive prevention strategies. His reputation as a skilled investigator attracted the attention of other kingdoms, leading to requests for assistance with their own security challenges and creating valuable intelligence-sharing relationships. The economic impact of preventing the coup was substantial, as the planned military conflict would have devastated trade relationships and depleted the royal treasury through war expenses. The preservation of political stability allowed King Frederick to focus on domestic improvements in economic development rather than defending against foreign invasion or internal rebellion. Public confidence in the kingdom's institutions was reinforced by the successful resolution of the conspiracy, demonstrating that the rule of law applied equally to all citizens regardless of their social position. The transparency of the legal proceedings and the thorough investigation of all aspects of the plot helped restore trust in the government's ability to protect the interests of the kingdom and its people. The events became part of Valdoria's historical record as an example of how vigilance and integrity could protect democratic institutions against those who would abuse their positions for personal gain. Marcus's story inspired a new generation of royal guards who understood that their duty extended beyond simple physical protection to include defending the principles and values that made their kingdom worth protecting. As life returned to normal in Valdoria Castle, Marcus continued his duties with the satisfaction of knowing that his actions had preserved not only precious jewels, but the independence and integrity of his homeland. The conspiracy's failure had strengthened the kingdom's defenses against future threats, while demonstrating the importance of having dedicated public servants who placed duty above personal interest. The kingdom of Valdoria emerged from the crisis more secure, more unified, and more committed to the principles of justice and honor that defined its national character.